Over the past few weeks, there have been a handful of big stories involving religious leaders pretending to take positive steps when it comes to LGBTQ rights, but they're not that huge when you take a closer look. Like when the Church of England said bishops should be allowed to bless same-sex couples, even though it's totally voluntary and same-sex weddings would still be forbidden in their institutions. Sprinkling some magical Jesus dust on gay couples is barely a baby step. And then Pope Francis said homosexuality is not a crime, and that it should be decriminalized anywhere it's illegal, which is great. Except the Catholic Church still hasn't changed any of its bigoted views about gay people, and faith-based anti-gay positions are the main reason homosexuality gets criminalized. More on that in a bit. But the story that really bugged me as another instance of a religious leader getting undeserved praise for saying something seemingly nice about gay people involved Pastor Andy Stanley, the leader of North Point Community Church in Alpharetta, Georgia. This is one of the largest megachurches in the country. There was an out-of-context clip that went viral on Twitter and TikTok with people chiming in, saying things like how refreshing it was to hear an evangelical preacher saying such positive things about gay people. And wouldn't we all be better off if more Christians took his lead? No, we would not be. And before I show you the clip, there were also very conservative Christians lashing out against Andy Stanley, saying his sermon was a disgrace, and he was caving in to what they believe is sin, which I happen to think is not true, because all those people are pretty much on the same side of the issue. Andy Stanley is just a better salesman. Here's just a little bit of what he said.
A gay person who still wants to attend church after the way the church has treated the gay community, I'm telling you, they have more faith than I do. They have more faith than a lot of you. A gay person who knows, you know what? I might not be accepted here, but I'm going to try it anyway. Have you ever done that as a straight person?
His message seems pretty clear to me from those clips. Straight evangelicals could learn a lot about commitment to their churches by taking a cue from gay Christians who have been demonized and traumatized by church leaders, yet remain devoted to the faith. Andy Stanley is not wrong on that point. In fact, just to go on a small tangent, the right-wing radicals who claim the mantle of patriotism could learn something similar by looking at the way many Black Americans love the country, despite the countless indignities they've suffered and continue to suffer. I mean, rhetorically, I get the point Stanley was making. But to take that point and pretend Stanley is saying anything unique or positive about gay people is a stretch that is not backed up by anything. Here's some background most people didn't mention when they shared that sermon clip. It was delivered during the Drive Conference 2022 last May, which is an event hosted by Andy Stanley's church and given to a crowd full of other Christian ministers. While the full video is not available online, some context can be deciphered from public notes about his sermon. And the bottom line is that it's nothing special if you've seen megachurch pastors speak before. The pastor warns everyone about how young people are not as religious as they used to be, and it's up to his Christian audience to help turn that around. For example, he tells them to pin their faith on the story of Jesus, as opposed to, say, culture war issues. He also urges those Christian leaders to follow Jesus instead of merely believing in Jesus. I mean, as an atheist, I can safely say none of that would change my mind. It doesn't address any of the actual reasons so many people want nothing to do with Christianity or organized religion, but that's a different video. And then, Andy Stanley tells the crowd to acknowledge gay people, like the fact that they exist. He says Christians should not pretend gay people are just straight people with a sin problem. And he says it's not the role of a church to decide someone's salvation for them. In his mind, churches should welcome everybody and lead them down the correct path through their actions. Be the role model. Others will follow. That's what he was getting at. But letting gay people be a part of your church is not new or interesting. Notice the language he uses. It's the same wishy-washy rhetoric we've seen in those pathetic "he gets us" ads.
A girl got pregnant. She was scared. Her parents thought her boyfriend was the father, but the baby wasn't his. He delivered the child and laid him in a manger.
Stanley never says he's okay with, or even comfortable with, homosexuality. He doesn't say his Christian audience should support same-sex marriage, or that his church will perform those weddings. He doesn't say faith-based adoption agencies should welcome gay parents who would like to take in a child who needs a home. He doesn't say gay people in legal civil marriages are permitted to have sex. He wouldn't say any of those things because at his core, he is still fundamentally anti-gay. All of that tracks with how many conservative churches and many Christian denominations have treated gay people in recent years. It's fine to be gay, but it's a sin to ever act on it.
A gay man or woman who wants to worship their heavenly Father, who did not answer the cry of their heart when they were 12 and 13 and 14 and 15. God said no, and they still love God.
If you are gay and you are a member of Andy Stanley's church, you may be welcome inside, and they will gladly take your tithe money. But the expectation is that you remain single and celibate forever. The best thing we can say about his sermon is that he refrained from calling gay people groomers, like a lot of other conservative bigots.
You shouldn't be talking to kindergartners about gender identity, especially if you're not their parents. That's creepy. You should be arrested for that.
I'm not just tossing out some conspiracy theory here. The website Church Clarity tracks this very issue. Their purpose is to publicly state what churches believe about homosexuality and women leaders, even if those churches try to hide it. They say Stanley's church doesn't publicly state their LGBTQ policy, which suggests, to me anyway, they prefer to hide it from prospective members. They claim to welcome everyone, but you have to be like a level 8 operating thetan to learn the church's true feelings. Church Clarity does note, however, that in 2018, a form for potential church volunteers required them to say they were not in a same-sex relationship. So it's not even a well-kept secret. Andy Stanley's church loves gay people unless you're a gay person who wants to be in a same-sex relationship, or have your same-sex wedding in the church, or consummate your civil marriage later on. Then you are doing something wrong in his mind, and you need to be fixed. That's why Andy Stanley's sermon was not a step forward. It's the same bigoted BS we're used to hearing from evangelical preachers. He just delivered it with a smile, as if he's doing gay people a favor by complimenting their devotion. He is just couching his bigotry in the language of religion to make it all sound better. Just because he's not preaching fire and brimstone doesn't mean he doesn't harbor the same views as every other evangelical who routinely condemns homosexuality. His sermon is no different from what Pope Francis has said about gay people. Sure, homosexuality should be decriminalized, and I'm glad he said that. But the church's beliefs have not changed. Remember when the Pope was asked about a gay priest a decade ago, and he said, "Who am I to judge?" People celebrated that too. And they were wrong. The Pope and the Catholic Church still think homosexual acts are intrinsically immoral and contrary to the natural law, while homosexual tendencies are objectively disordered. Their rule book says that. Even if individual Catholics often disagree, and they do, that is the teaching of the Catholic Church. The Pope opposes same-sex marriage even if he supports civil unions. He opposes a married gay couple getting it on, even if he supports getting rid of civil laws punishing that. Andy Stanley is using the same playbook. He is not an LGBTQ ally. He doesn't affirm gay people. And if you think otherwise, you have been duped by a guy speaking Christianese. Don't fall for it. And look, if I am wrong about any of this, I dare Andy Stanley's church to publicly say they support gay people, gay couples, and what gay couples do in their bedrooms within the confines of marriage. He'll never do it, because saying out loud what he believes privately would turn people away from him. And he knows it. And he would rather lie to win your trust than be honest about what he really thinks.